The 2026 tight end class is actually pretty good. We'll tell you where we want to see the top prospects land next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is the Fantasy Football Hall of Famer, Michael Fabiano. And on today's show, we're taking a look at the top tight ends that are going to be available this offseason between free agents, maybe some trades, and of course, the 2026 NFL Draft. And this is our wish list. This is where we'd like to see these players land. And let's start it with the top with a future Hall of Famer in Travis Kelce. What would you like to see happen here? Do you want him to come back for one more year? Do you want him to retire? What's your thought process?
I'd like to see him come back just selfishly from a fantasy perspective because tight end's thin. And even though he's 36, he still was one of the 3 best tight ends in fantasy football last season. Now, keep in mind, the position has seen a decline in terms of statistical success and the number of players who actually we can start on a weekly basis and think that, okay, I'm going to get at least 10, 12 points from this player. So tight end's been a harder position to fill. So even though Kelce's past his prime, he's still a guy that will be startable every single week in fantasy leagues. Now, if he decides that he is going to ride off into the sunset with Taylor Swift and have all kinds of babies and have this glorious, fantastic life aside from football, I'd love to see Kansas City bring in David Njoku. And my initial wish was that we would see Kyle Pitts go to Washington and then Njoku go to Atlanta, where he would reunite with Kevin Stefanski. Unfortunately, that wish was dashed when Atlanta decided they were going to tag Pitts. So he's not going anywhere. So I think one of the next best spots for Njoku would be KC if Kelce retires. Now, Kelce, I said, is 36. Njoku is going to be 30 in July. He's currently the tight end 20 over on Dynasty League Football. And he's a very good player. He's a playmaker, averaging 10 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 years. Last year, he didn't do it because of 1, injury, 2, Harold Fannin, or maybe switch those. But if he goes into Kansas City's offense, knowing how Andy Reid likes to utilize the tight end position, okay? And listen, I understand that Travis Kelce is amazing, but I mean, you could go back to Philadelphia if you want to. You can go back to Chad Lewis, back to those days. Marcus remembers him. Some of you may not. But he always likes to use the tight end in his offense. So I think Njoku would move up from 20. I'm not saying he's going into the top 10 because he's 30 years old, but he would certainly move up and be a more attractive dynasty option if he went to KC. And remember, we don't know what's going on with Rashee Rice. We don't know if he's going to get suspended. We don't know if the Chiefs are going to be like, we're done with this kid and just cut ties all the way. We have no idea. So the possibility is there could be a lot of targets available in Kansas City's offense. Remember, Hollywood Brown's a free agent as well. Like, that offense could look very different. And so if Kelce does decide to retire, I think Njoku would be a very nice fit in KC. There are a few tight ends that I like to go to Kansas City just because of the situation, assuming Kelce's not there. But Njoku just would be a really good fit. Veteran guy who's made plays, who's been a top 6 tight end in the past from a fantasy perspective. I think that would be a really good move. And by the way, his nickname is what?
Chief.
There you go.
Yeah. So I actually disagree with you a little bit here. Not on David Njoku. You and I both really like him. I think it's time for him to get into an offense that has an established quarterback. He's played with a ton of quarterbacks in Cleveland, and he's past his prime. But I do think he can still be somebody that's fantasy relevant week in and week out. I'm going to use someone like our guy, Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson is not a better athlete than what David Njoku is now.
Not even close.
Jake Ferguson's 3 years younger, 4 years younger. So I do think Njoku, for at least a couple of years, can have value in the right offense. But the part I disagree with you is on Travis Kelce. I want to see him retire. I mean, he was legitimately bad from like a real life perspective last year. I mean, there was multiple games. It was the Houston game. He had 2 balls bounce off his hands that were intercepted. The Philadelphia game, I'm sure you remember in week 2, right down at the goal line, ball bounces off his hands. Philadelphia takes it back for a touchdown, and that's the difference of the game. He looked so slow out there, and to me, it felt like it bogged down their entire offense. I think you get Travis Kelce out of there. This becomes a more wide open, faster offense, and I think it actually helps Patrick Mahomes. I think it helps Rashee Rice. I think it helps Xavier Worthy and whatever tight end you bring in. So Kelce's had an unbelievable career, but I think it's time to move on.
He's past his prime, but with that said, he averaged right around 11 points per game. He was the 3rd best tight end in fantasy football based on total points.
I know.
It's a bad position, Marcus.
But it is. I'm just saying, I think you could put a lot of tight ends in that spot, and they're going to put up big numbers. I thought he was a net negative for Kansas City last year.
From a fantasy standpoint, and I agree with you, all your points are valid, but from a fantasy standpoint, you lose him, and that's another spot at that position where you're like, well, you know, who goes into the top 10? Maybe it would be Njoku, and not even in the top 10. We're talking about top 3. He was the 3rd best tight end in fantasy football. He had 17 fewer points than Pitts last year. That's it. And everyone talks about how great Pitts was. Well, he was great in the second half of the season. Well, so can I just give you from a depth perspective, I'd like to see him come back. But
well, hold on, Fabs, real quick. Right now, if you go over to Pro Football Focus, you can see what they're projecting in terms of Kelce's salary, which is 1 year, $15 million, fully guaranteed. Dallas Goedert is expected to get a 2 years, $12 million per year. If Goddard was a tight end in Kansas City, I think I would feel just as good about his fantasy outlook as I would Travis Kelce, who's he's 5 years younger, 6 years younger.
I don't disagree. Again, it's more about depth to me. You're taking away a tight end who just finished 3rd in points at the position, no matter how slow he looked, no matter how his skill set has declined. And would you, in a redraft, think that Travis Kelce, if he remains in Kansas City, would be a top 10 tight end? I think absolutely. There's no question about that. So that's where I am saying that the depth would get hurt if Kelce left, because he's still, again, 3rd. 2 tight ends had more points than him last year. 2, McBride and Pitts, and he was very close with Pitts. So at the end of the day, all the stuff that we saw on the field, the deterioration of his skill set, slower, as you mentioned, all those valid points. At the end of the day, he was still the 3rd best tight end in fantasy football. And so if you lose the 3rd best tight end in fantasy football, you're going to hurt depth at a position that already lacks depth.
I'm okay with it. Because I think
it's going to that he's easily replaceable at this point in his career, and I totally get it.
I just think he was bad. That's all. I just think he was a pretty bad player for the most. And you really noticed it against good teams. Like he could put up numbers against some of the bad teams that they play, but Kansas City doesn't have an easy schedule. I mean, they're playing in that AFC West, and there's really good defenses, and that's where you notice it when you're playing against some fast defenses that fly all over the field. It's shocking how slow he is. And the other part of this, Fabs, is I just like this free agent market at tight end. Maybe it's not Dallas Goedert. Maybe they go out and get, I don't know, what if it's Darren Waller in that spot instead? You telling me that Darren Waller wouldn't put up big numbers in Kansas City?
Just give me Njoku. Give me the chief for the Chiefs. That's where I think the win is.
Okay, what if we could manufacture production out of that spot? What if it's Chig Okonkwo, who's a free agent from Tennessee? He's 10 years younger, way more athletic. Could he be a guy in that offense that puts up huge numbers? Yeah, I'm just not worried about replacing Travis Kelce's production. I think there'll be somebody that steps up there. That's all.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you think Chig Okonkwo is going to be a top 10 tight end in Kansas City, I mean, I don't know about that, but
why? Do you think he's significantly less of a player than Travis Kelce is right now?
Travis Kelce is a Hall of Famer. He may be the greatest tight end to ever play the game from a pass catching perspective. So Tony Gonzalez was 37 and he was still putting up good numbers. Again, 36, tight end 3.
I'm out. All right, let's talk about Isaiah Likely, because for a lot of people, that's the big name they're watching here. This is somebody that a lot of people believe could be a top 10 dynasty tight end as soon as next year. Where will he land, or where would we like to see him land? We'll get to that next.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. During the time that I've talked to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. That's what you need. And when you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is the job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
This episode is brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is always a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy and reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. And that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. And for a limited time only, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box with free shipping and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box with free shipping and free dessert for life. You must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. The offseason never stops in Dynasty world. We're always making trades, making moves. So go be a part of the Everydayer Club. You're going to get ad-free access to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast for just $5 a month. Go to lockedondynasty.supercast.com to join the club. All right, Fabs, let's talk about Isaiah Likely, because this is a player that a lot of people have been waiting for to get an opportunity to be the #1 tight end on his respective offense. He could have had a huge year last year, but there was about 3 touchdowns that got taken off the board from him, including one where he fumbled the ball at the 1-yard line, one that the NFL admitted yesterday should have stood as a touchdown in the Pittsburgh game.
I think, didn't Lamar Jackson say something about that on X too?
Yes.
Wait, we should have won that game, right?
I mean, that was I don't want to get into that spiel. He's a free agent, and the Ravens would like to bring him back. But where would you like to see Isaiah Likely land?
Not in Baltimore. I like to keep him in that area of the country and go to Washington. I liked Pitts in Washington. That's not going to happen now. Pitts is going to remain in Atlanta. But the Commanders have a need. Ben Sennett hasn't really shown us anything, and he's been in the league for a couple of years. Zach Ertz, well, we know he wants to come back. He had a very devastating injury last year, but he's a free agent. I don't know that Washington's bringing him back. Jaden Daniels, when Zach Ertz was playing and active, he liked throwing him the football. He likes throwing the ball to the tight ends. Will Deebo Samuel be back? We don't know. He also is somebody that could leave Washington. So Likely could end up being the second or third option at worst in the passing game in Washington's offense. That's a big win to me. He's a young guy. He's going to be 26 in April. He's only one spot ahead of Njoku. If you're looking at Dynasty League fantasy ADP data right now, he's the tight end 19. I think he could go higher than that, maybe much higher than that, if he lands on a team that's going to make him their featured tight end. And Washington is one of those teams that could desperately use tight end help and a playmaker on offense, because right now, if you look at Washington's offense, Marcus, they're almost completely devoid of playmakers. Outside of Terry McLaurin,
who's in his 30s?
Think about that. Their backfield, nope. Tight end, nope. The wide receivers behind Terry McLaurin, if Debo's gone, nope. They need help.
I don't disagree. I think that's a really good landing spot. The other one, I'm also looking at teams that have like up and coming quarterbacks that have spots open. And I'm looking at Tennessee. I know they drafted Gunnar Helm last year, but I
kind of like him.
Yeah, I don't mind Gunnar Helm, but I also think Isaiah likely could come right in and be a target hog in Tennessee, which is what we want, right? And a guy that's going to get 25-30% of the targets in the passing game. And I know that's a lot for a tight end, but I think they're going to be open there in Tennessee. I think Washington's a really good call. New England is another team that has been mentioned. He's kind of put some things out there that he wouldn't mind signing with the Patriots.
But then he ends up in the same situation he was in Baltimore behind Hunter Henry, except for, it was Andrews for all these years.
Yes. Although
I want him to be the dude. I want him
how,
to be the
how
guy.
long do you think Henry is going to have a role in that offense?
I listen, tight ends, a lot of these guys play, pretty well into their early 30s. So you never know.
True.
And he definitely is a favorite target of Drake May. At least he was last year.
How about the San Francisco 49ers? And I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to say it before you even say it. Well, what about Jake Tongas? No,
I love him.
But I do think likely is different, right? And I think we've seen Kyle Shanahan be able to mold his offense for unique players. And with George Kittle likely to miss at least some time in 2026, we don't know how long. There are some reports out there that because of the way his Achilles tore, he actually might be back sooner than anybody anticipates. But we talked about the weapons. I believe it was on yesterday's show. I mean, it's Ricky Pearsall, who can't stay healthy, Brandon Ayuk, who's going to be cut, Jennings, who's going to be a free agent. Like there's targets open in this offense. And I think in a Shanahan offense where it's a lot of play action and a lot of throws across the middle of the field, likely could thrive in San Fran.
See, but is there a limitation? Because when George Kittle comes back, whenever that is, he ends up being in the same thing in Baltimore where he's got a guy that's older but still ahead of him on the depth chart that's going to take away opportunities. And
I don't disagree.
So again, like in Washington, there's nobody. Like that depth chart is waving him in. Come on in, Isaiah. You're likely the number one tight end in Washington if you come and sign with us, pun intended.
I got one more landing spot. Just some whispers out there. Sounds like the Bengals are interested in Isaiah Likely, which I find fascinating. Right now, that's a team that has a million weapons, and it's going to be hard for him to be a consistent option in the passing game. Isaiah Likely is very inconsistent. Mike Gesicki is very inconsistent. Isaiah Likely can be more of the every down tight end. How would you feel about him in Cincinnati?
If Gesicki is out of the mix, then okay. But I think Washington has the opportunity for a higher ceiling for Likely, and that's why I like him going there.
I'm just trying to figure out alternate destinations.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Because I agree with you. Washington is the ideal spot. We heard Zach Ertz is coming back in 2026. I would be shocked if it's back to Washington.
I mean, God bless him. I mean, coming back from that injury, what has he got left? He's got to be 37 now.
He's almost as washed up as Travis Kelce.
Oh God! All right, let's keep going. Boy, you hate Travis Kelce all of a sudden. Wow. I think you're just jealous. That's all.
Yeah, I'm not a Taylor Swift person.
He's marrying Taylor Swift.
That's all right. My sister's a big Swiftie, and she's kind of turned me off, but that's all right.
I think she's turned a lot of NFL fans off.
That's fine. One more name before we get to the draft. Charlie Kolar, who is actually the Ravens' third tight end.
You love this dude.
Well, a lot of people are talking about him getting way more money in free agency than expected. Don't be surprised if Charlie Kolar lands in one of these situations where he can be an every down tight end, and all of a sudden, probably not a top 10, top 12 fantasy tight end, but somebody who is on our radar every single week. Teams love him. He's only 27 years old. He's a really good blocker. Keep an eye on Charlie Kolar.
All right. That's certainly someone to keep in mind in Dynasty as Marcus digs deep like only Marcus can do.
All right, let's talk about Kenyon Sadiq, the top tight end prospect in the 2026 NFL draft. Where would we like to see him land? It's not going to be in some of these spots that Fabs is talking about, like Kansas City. We'll tell you our wish list team for Sadiq next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. And here's how it works. Use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win a trip to the NBA Finals for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. And if you're already looking at the board and thinking about which teams can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. I love the futures market at this time of year. We're past the NBA All-Star break. You're really starting to see the teams separate from one another. This is the perfect time to get in on the action. So visit FanDuel.com to get started and use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Let's talk about Kenyon Sadiq, the top tight end prospect in the 2026 NFL Draft. His range is kind of all over the place. I think he could go anywhere from like top 8 all the way to like the mid-20s or so. In an ideal world, where would you like to see him land?
So ideal but realistic, right?
Ideal but realistic.
I haven't seen any mocks where he's in the top 10. And so I don't know that
that's a little, I think it's a little bit of a stretch to assume that
right.
He gets there, but maybe he has an awesome combine and he does, but I'm with you.
So I'm saying second half of the draft, right? So we're looking at 15 and lower, say. So I mean, Tampa Bay could be in the mix for him, but if they bring back Mike Evans, they have Godwin, they have Emeka Egbuka, they have a lot of mouths to feed.
We should mention Cade Otton's a free agent as well.
Cade Otton, right, correct, is a free agent. The Jets don't need a tight end. Detroit doesn't need a tight end. Minnesota doesn't need a tight end. I mean, Carolina is an option there too, right? I mean, that may be a landing spot for Sadiq. But if the Eagles trade A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert is a free agent, is not brought back, I think Sadiq would be a really fun fit from a fantasy perspective with the Eagles, because in the case where Brown's gone, he's maybe the second or third targeted option at worst in that offense. Dallas Goedert is coming off a season where he scored 11 touchdowns and averaged over 12 points per game. It was the best season he's had. It was a lot of touchdowns, and that probably was a massive outlier. But if you're talking about a scenario where A.J. Brown's gone, and that's where I'm liking Sadiq if he is gone to the Eagles. Otherwise, I think there's probably some other teams out there, but I just, like Denver would be a great fit, but I don't think you're going to fall that far. So
no, I mean, it's possible that Denver could trade up, I suppose.
Right, exactly. Like outside of some sort of scenario where a team trades up, yes. But I started watching some of the YouTube stuff on Sadiq, and I got to be honest with you. My mouth dropped like I had just seen Sydney Sweeney in one of her lingerie outfits, okay? This kid is awesome. Marcus is going to kill me right now. This kid,
I'm debating whether to leave that in or not.
Awesome.
If you're, I'm
oh
leaving
my
it
God,
good.
what? She's all over the social media in her underwear. What do you want from me? But he is such a freak. I mean, Sadiq the Freak. It makes too much sense. Maybe they've already named him that because I don't follow college. I'm following and looking at these kids and what they did now. He looks like he's going to be a mismatch nightmare at the next level. And let's not forget, 2 years ago, Sam Laporta, number 1 tight end in fantasy football, rookie. 1 year ago, Brock Bowers, number 1 tight end in fantasy football, rookie. This past season, Harold Fannin and Tyler Warren, numbers 6 and 4, respectively, in fantasy football among tight ends, rookie season. I think Sadiq has a shot to be top 5 this year, especially if Kelce goes bye-bye, which he may or may not. And potentially locked into the top 8. Like, that's how good I think this kid could be. A lot of fun to watch.
I got my landing spot, and I'm going to name some players that played for this team at tight end last year. And I want to see if you can figure out which team I'm talking about. Trayton Welch, Zaire Mitchell-Payton, Molaki Matatavo,
God bless you.
Mason Pline, Jack Stoll. Do you know what team this is I'm talking about? These guys played like a combined 550 snaps for this respective
Wait,
team.
Jack Stoll?
Yes.
That's the only, I got to be honest with you. That's the only name that I recognize.
These are real names. I'm not making these up.
No. I get it. Hit me with it.
This is the Saints. The Saints had even Foster Moreau played 250 snaps for them last year.
If you said Moreau, then I would know.
Yeah, so I'd left him out.
But I mean, but Juwan Johnson, you're just like Juwan Johnson's gone. No, we don't. And not that I wouldn't like the fit.
Well, here's the idea.
A tight end at 8.
I think in this draft it makes some sense, right? Like if you're the Saints, what is the number one goal this offseason? It's to make sure that you put weapons around Tyler Shuck so that he can develop as a quarterback. You did it last year with drafting Kelvin Banks. Now it's time to get some weapons, right? You've got Chris Olave. I think Sadiq, who can operate more as like a slot receiver rather than a traditional tight end, would make so much sense. They had all these tight ends that couldn't do anything last year. They were all bad.
Wait a minute. Juwan Johnson was the 8th best tight end in fantasy football, Marcus.
Right. But I'm saying all these other tight ends that were just like, they were just trying to throw anything against the wall to stick. J1 is fine from a fantasy perspective, but that's because I think he was forced into that role a little bit. Taysom Hill's a free agent. Foster Moreau's a free agent. Johnson is also, I believe he's 29. He's going to be 30 in week 1. He's also an undersized tight end that doesn't block at all. Sadiq is just a way more dynamic player, and I would not be surprised if the Saints just think, hey, he's a better tight end prospect than any of the receivers in this range. Let's add him to our offense. Kellen Moore has had a lot of success with tight ends in his play calling history. I think Sadiq with Tyler Shuck could put up monster numbers.
Okay, so if Jeremiah Love, Carnell Tate, and Sadiq are available for the Saints, they take who?
Probably Tate.
Right. And I think Sadiq may be 3rd in that trio.
Probably.
Just because.
Oh, hey, listen, you're asking me my wish list. I'm not saying
No. I get it. I just wonder how realistic it is that he would go to New Orleans. I'm not saying that it's a bad landing spot at all. But
what if it's a trade? What if it's a trade down, Fabs? You go from inside the top 10, you drop down to pick 14, and then you take Sadiq.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I could see that too. For me, again, selfish. We are selfish in the fantasy football community and as analysts. We want the love to be spread out. I like Juwan Johnson, and I think he's a top 12 to 15 tight end if nobody comes in there to potentially compete for targets. So I want Sadiq to go to a team that needs a tight end, that will feature a tight end.
Saints.
And, okay, I think the Eagles need a tight end more because Goddard's a free agent. I think Carolina needs a tight end more because, Jadavian Sanders is kind of, it's all right. I mean, he's not going to make a fantasy impact. If you think that he's going to go that high, and as you mentioned, maybe they trade down and then draft. I mean, that's totally within the realm of possibility. I mean, I saw Daniel Jeremiah mock him to the Chargers, and that made me want to throw up.
I love it.
So I'm just, again, I am not a scout of prospects, and I am not a guy who's going to go out there and throw a mock draft up there because I'm a fantasy football analyst. But the guys that I respect, the guys that I look to in these sort of situations during this time of the year, I don't see Sadiq being picked in the top 10 or even in the top 12.
Well, let's wait till the combine's over.
Kind of second half. No. I get a combine and everyone will gaga because he's an athletic just freak. I get that. But for right now, I just don't know if he's going to go that high. I will say this. If he goes to New Orleans, where is he in Dynasty among tight ends? Probably 4th or 5th, right? I mean, at worst.
That's what I'm saying. Like, would you take Harold Fannin over him?
But I think, no, I would want Sadiq over Fannin. But even if he went to Philly, I think the same thing holds true. There's only a few teams that could draft him where I don't think he would be that high in Dynasty. Most teams that are drafting him are going to utilize him to the best of their abilities. I just want the love to be spread out a little bit. And I kind of like Juwan Johnson, as a tight end option in fantasy. And he's a relatively cheap one too, who again, finished with more fantasy points last year than Hunter Henry, Dalton Schultz, George Kittle, who was hurt. He was Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson. He was very, very good down the stretch for fantasy mans.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Dynasty ad-free plus members-only Discord access and so much more. Head over to lockedondynasty.com.supercast.com and try that again. lockedondynasty.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we'll send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow.